Hello, I'm Dr. Darrell L. Fortson, and I'm a practicing physician in Las Vegas, Nevada. I come to you today speaking as the Executive Director of AASRT Incorporated, also known as the African American Slave Reparations Team, or AASRT. Our organization seeks to economically heal Black America through the elimination of the black-white racial net worth gap over the next 100 years and spiritually liberate Black and white America in the process through the prudent distribution and management of largely voluntary monetary and asset donations. Like all Americans who love our country and its citizens, our board and I have been deeply disturbed by the senseless and public homicide of Mr. George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the nationwide paroxysms of violence that have ensued. Freedom-loving Americans of every race, creed, and color find themselves in their homes and their workplaces pondering what can be done about these seemingly never-ending episodes of intrusive, humiliating, unconstitutional, and all too often deadly interactions of Black Americans with law enforcement, with a show of force that is far out of proportion to the real or perceived threat. And in some cases, as Blacks sit, rest, and exist unawares in their homes, there is a massive show of force where there is no threat whatsoever. Even where the consequences are not grave, Black Americans are forced to deal with nosy, arrogant, and simple-minded white folk who take it upon themselves to enforce their own twisted brand of white privilege and authority. They noisily and irritatingly buzz like a cluster of gnats on a hot summer day in the ears of law-abiding Black folk who are quietly and lawfully living their lives and minding their own business. These busy Beckys, careless Karens, and chippy Chads question the rights of Blacks to live, work, play, and simply exist in a physical space they have unilaterally decided Blacks have no right to access, use, or exist in. And so again, the question remains, what is a good citizen to do about these situations? It is the strong opinion of our organization that there are several steps that can and should be taken to stem the immediate loss of life and property in the wake of George Floyd's murder and subsequent nationwide protests, and some things that need to be done in the long term as well. Some of these actions must be largely undertaken by Black Americans, others by white Americans and or Americans of other races and nationalities, and still others must be done by all of us as a collective of American citizens. We enumerate these actions as follows, and for Black America we solemnly but passionately say this. 1. The time for street protests in this matter has now come to an end. The Black community has, in no uncertain terms, made it clear that they are utterly and totally disgusted with the racist status quo in regards to police brutality in America and pervasive social and institutionalized racism in general. The only purpose further street mass action serves now would be to expose communities already deeply wounded by Black on Black violence, police on Black violence, and America on Black violence, to further destruction of life and property. No curfew needs to be imposed upon communities where violence has taken place or is threatened. Rather, AASRT Incorporated calls upon the citizens of Black America to impose a sundown curfew on themselves for the next 40 days and to use this time in the quiet of their homes to turn off the news, entertainment, and social media, and instead arm themselves with knowledge on 3 core areas of inquiry. The first area of inquiry should be in the area of slavery. The second should be in the realm of reparations for the descendants of slaves of African descent. And the third should be in the realm of economic empowerment. Reading and inquiring about these vital issues is not an academic or intellectual exercise any more than reading the instructions on how to take your life-saving medication or safely operate your lawnmower is merely an academic or intellectual exercise. Rather, it is the constructive utilization of the life that the good Lord has blessed us with to know what is going on, why it is happening, and what you must do to change it. You may rest assured that the politicians fighting tooth and nail to deny black citizens their access to voting are reading. You may also rest assured that the Nazi skinheads, the white supremacist leaders, and the cunning exploiters of racial division in America, both foreign and domestic, are reading, learning, sharing, and implementing the evil they have read and learned. If good is to be done, then the black community must commit themselves to doing the same for the sake of goodness. Finally, if for no other reason, the black community needs to stop street protesting for now, because we are not alone. It is becoming clear that there are individuals who are not black who are instigating much of the violence and property destruction taking place in these protests, whether they are white supremacists, Russian operatives, or law enforcement or governmental or political double agents. These people and the organizations on whose behalf they operate are using our understandable righteous anger to defame the black community, undermine its reputation, and pervert the justice of our cause to further their nefarious aims of racial dominance, political success, American defeat, or all three. Don't go for the okie doke. Get indoors, get knowledge. Don't get or spread COVID, and let's get going on making sure that the killing of George Floyd is not in vain, and that his killing doesn't end up killing us or our communities. Secondly, know that AASRT Incorporated is committed to getting black folks paid, period. AASRT has already undertaken the disbursement of reparation funds voluntarily given throughout America by people black, white, and Hispanic to registrants meeting the criteria to receive them through its web-based AASRDS system. AASRDS stands for Automated Slave Reparations Disbursement System. This system disburses reparations to qualified registrants immediately and automatically as soon as they are received. But you can't receive them if you don't register. Therefore, we advise all eligible African Americans to go to www.aasrt2020.com. That's www.aasrt2020.com. and register for reparations so that you can start receiving them now rather than later. Don't just get angry. Get prayed up. Get informed. Get involved. Get to the polls, and when it comes to reparations, get registered and get paid. Third, AASRT Incorporated strongly urges the black citizens of the United States to abandon all expectations for white people to quote-unquote save them. White people are our neighbors. They may be our friends, our co-workers, and with increasing regularity, our family. But they are not and will not be our saviors. We need to quit asking them to be something they neither are nor can be. AASRT Incorporated has come into existence in no small part in order to liberate black America from the ridiculous notion that a tribe of people incessantly soaked in the noxious brine of American racist institutions, histories, habits, beliefs, propaganda, and exposures to their ongoing benefit can avoid being pickled and salty with racial prejudices, fears, and misconceptions. Moreover, it is even more ludicrous to think that a people having undergone such a process can en masse turn around and liberate us from the very toxicity that they have been exposed to and have benefited from all their lives. To be clear, there are more white Americans than ever before deeply committed to racial justice and real change than ever before. Witness all the white people you have seen marching, carrying signs, and risking their health, welfare, and freedom to stand up for the cause of racial justice in the past few days. But while their participation is needed, valued, and appreciated, our collective black American destiny does not rest with them, nor can they determine the terms of our collective victory. This is black folks' job, and AASRT Incorporated fully intends to lead the way in mapping out the path to African American self-determination. AASRT Incorporated will accept no terms in the matter of black equality that do not include an end to the black-white racial net worth gap through a reparations paradigm. The racial net worth gap is among the most changeable and measurable variable in the black experience in America, and thus deserves to be forthrightly addressed. This is exactly what AASRT Incorporated is doing and intends to do well into the future. AASRT Incorporated requests that Black America work less on taking white racism personally and begin to address it corporately. This is our fourth point. Of course, we are all human beings, and it is both human and natural to become offended when we, as black folk, are mistreated or cast aside simply because we are black. It is inevitable to go there, but we cannot stay there. For example, the intensity of the response to the senseless death of Mr. George Floyd may for a moment slow the tide of police brutality toward black people. But make no mistake, incidents such as these will continue for the foreseeable future until black America, not white America on their terms, but black America on our terms, executes an effective plan above and beyond the police themselves to hold a mirror in front of white America that forces them to examine all of the dark forces that go into making a police officer as malignant as Derek Chauvin of the Minneapolis Police Department. This means not only examining police training, but critiquing all of the media imagery and widely held belief systems that support the kind of toxic abandonment of the heart that black Americans are exposed to from all too many law enforcement officers every single day. We all need to understand that as long as black net worth unjustly lags 6 figures behind their white counterparts, the same to serve and protect will continue to mean that white Americans get served by the police and protected from black people by violent and oppressive means. This is one of the reasons why reparations and the end of the racial net worth gap is so important. But wallowing in our feelings and anger will not change this trend. Only decisive and persistent action in the way of reparations will. In addition, there are specific actions that white Americans must take in these challenging times, in these challenging but opportunity-laden times. First of all, 1, white Americans should support and contribute to the slave reparations effort in whatever way they can or are spiritually moved to. Know this: however liberal, egalitarian, or faith-based a white person may say they are, and no matter how committed they say they are to ending racial prejudice in America, if they are not committed to some pathway for the economic repair of the descendants of a large group of the American citizenry that toiled some 244 years without any meaningful monetary compensation, then they are either lying to themselves or they are lying to you. White Americans may take comfort in knowing that it is the strong assertion by AASRT Incorporated that no white individual, owes reparations to any particular black citizen or group of black citizens merely on the basis of their respective races. However, what we also assert with equal passion is that reparations must get paid to African Americans if true racial equality, justice, and peace are to abide and remain in the American social experience. When translated into reality, it means that those who remain who may not necessarily owe what is due must ultimately pay what is due. This, for example, is why my wife and I pay reparations on a monthly basis. Not because we owe it, but because it must be paid by someone and because it is right for it to be paid. In this way, AASRT Incorporated is not asking white people for reparations. We are asking right people for reparations. Our organization will no longer dignify the question of whether reparations should be paid. Of course they should be paid. Instead, we are issuing a clarion call to the just to convene the righteous, the kind, and the benevolent of spirit to pay it. 2, It is time for white Americans to accept that racism is a pandemic that all Americans are to some degree, quote, carrying the virus, end quote, of. So often, when white Americans do something brazenly or even subtly racist, they say, oh, I'm not a racist, or I wasn't raised this way. But of course they are racist, and they were raised that way. Consider, for example, what happens when someone in your face politely tells you that you have something hanging out of your nose. Do you stand there with a disgusting piece of mucus dangling off your face, idiotically imploring the person right in front of you that I do not have anything in my nose? Or I wasn't raised to have things dangling from my nose? Of course not. You promptly retreat to get a tissue to immediately address the issue because you know intuitively that 1, you are only human. 2, being human means that you have some nasty, unpleasant stuff in your head. 3, some of that stuff often comes out when you least expect it. And 4, people can recognize a booger when they see it. So you should believe it when they say they see one on you. Your job as a white citizen is not to be perfect. Rather, it is to own up to the unassailable fact that you are, in no small part, a product of your racist environment, and thus not perfect. Your job also includes paying attention to how people and systems operate to oppress, to stagnate, injure, and in some cases end black people's lives. You should pay attention to this not because black people should be the focus of your white existence, but because justice, fairness, and treating others the way we would want to be treated should be the focus of everyone's existence. Also, it is time for white America to embrace the inescapable reality that if we don't do something very quickly that is very impactful in the way of race relations in America, this nation is going to collapse. And great will be the fall of it. And it won't collapse under the featherweight of black protest or rebellion. It will collapse from the sheer weight of 400 years of cruel and wicked injustice that a nation and its people, with passionate stubbornness, steadfastly refuse to confront and effectively end. So if you can't work to end racism within yourself and your community for the sake of your black neighbor's survival, then do it for your own survival and for that of your children. Finally, there are some steps that all of us, black, white, and otherwise, should take in these challenging times. These steps include the following. 1, all of America should be studying and seeking to understand racism and how devastating it can be to all of us. As a starting point on slavery, I would recommend an excellent summary on the History channel, on History.com, on the History.com website entitled Slavery in America. For reparations, AASRT Incorporated recommends the June 2014 article in the Atlantic Monthly magazine written by Ta-Nehisi Coates entitled The Case for Reparations. A Google search with the keywords above will bring it up immediately. If you want more information on the topic of reparations, I highly recommend the book From Here to Equality by William A. Darity Jr. and A. Kirsten Mullen. It was just released a few weeks ago and I am reading it now. The reading of the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo should be required reading in every high school and college in America, and a condition for hiring at every Fortune 500 company in the world. Lastly, for economic empowerment, AASRT Incorporated recommends that you invest in a subscription to 2 of the following 3 publications, whether physical or web-based: Black Enterprise Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, or Forbes Magazine. All of these resources mentioned are available at or through your public library if you lack internet access from home or cannot afford to subscribe to these resources. You should do this especially if you aren't very well educated, if you're unemployed, a young single mother, or have done a bid or are doing one now, or are in a gang, For the road to true freedom is always, always paved with knowledge, be you black, white, or otherwise. 2, demand that your pastor, your priest, minister, rabbi, or imam at your place of worship give a sermon on racism and the tenets of your faith within 40 days, and one on American slavery within 90 days. If the American citizenry cannot readily obtain sound and urgent spiritual direction regarding the preeminent social existential threat to our national well-being, then the preaching is essentially meaningless. Jesus was not a theoretician. He addressed real people's real problems: hunger and health, marital relationships, women's rights, and child protection. His gospel cautioned against being a respecter of persons, and the history of his faith speaks to how Semites, Africans, and Europeans came together to share a soul-saving gospel that has saved untold numbers from eternal damnation. In this critical hour, a faith leader that ignores racism and the evil injustices it begets is a faith leader no congregation should make time for. In closing, it is incumbent for all involved parties to understand that our Creator has allowed this conundrum of racial discrimination and injustice to proceed in such a way that it is impossible for it to be solved without us coming together as one nation and one people to solve it. Only our love for one another can extract us from this unholy mess that the United States of America now finds itself in. This must be now on the terms of the oppressed, who have earned, through much bloodshed, sweat, pain, and sorrow, the right to chart their own course to freedom. But it must be done together. For in truth, while it is the black man who stands oppressed, it is now the white man who stands dually enslaved. First shackled by the shame of a deplorable enslaving past, as well as being fettered by the fear of a future living alongside the black and brown people their forebears enslaved. And their progeny now continues to oppress, abuse, exploit, and sadly kill. Therefore, it is not the white man who must free us black folk. Rather, it is us black folk that are called to free them. We do so in 2 ways. First, we get black America paid. We get them paid what is owed, paid what is due, and paid what is right. And that amount is whatever amount makes it impossible to in any way judge a person's financial worth on the basis of the color of skin any better than you can judge the net worth of a white person based on the natural color of their hair or their eyes. Secondly, we must do the painful and challenging but essential work of coming to terms with our past and how it has affected our present state of affairs, with devastating impact for the nation as a whole and for black folk in particular. We have taken to the streets and spoken our piece. We may at some other moment have to revisit those same streets to peacefully petition the government for a redress of our grievances. But now is the time to perform our fundamental actions. Pray, learn, plan, and execute. AASRT has done and continues to do all 4. Register for reparations if you are eligible. Please donate if you can. Share the website of www.AASRT2020.com with anyone and everyone you know. Participate in doing at long last not only what is fervently desired, but what is right to do. May Almighty God richly bless the African American Slave Reparations Team and the United States of America. I